Welcome to the Construction Show. I'm your host, Jared Downey. Today on the show, we have technically a part two. It's their second time on the show, Polydeck, but both guests their first time on the Construction Show. Actually, Polydeck was on Mining Now, so it's their first time on the Construction Show. We've got Matthew Freissle. He is the Regional Business Development Manager at Polydeck, and we have Richard Clanton, Regional Manager at Polydeck. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Great to have you.
Yeah, morning, Jared. Thanks for having us. I'm looking forward to having a good conversation.
Likewise.
What's the background? What is that behind you? It's kind of a neat picture.
Well, yeah, that's pretty typical for us. I mean, there's we have all these plants that we go to, so that looks like a screening tower there and some steps and conveyors leading up to it. So that's pretty typical for us when we're running around out in the plants.
Well, Rich, how long have you been in the industry?
About 25 years. Started off as working for a independent ground engaging dealer in California, and we had screening accessories, stuff that went on the plant side in the aggregate industry, and just basically blossomed to going to an equipment dealer in California, and then I found Polydeck.
Had you dealt with Polydeck before working with them?
Actually, I used to compete against Polydeck selling.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So he was familiar, but not in a good way.
Yeah.
And then Matthew, you're part of the family actually that owns Polydeck. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So my grandpa started the company in 1978 in South Africa. So my grandpa's originally German, but he left war-torn Germany to look for a better life. So he ran to the furthest place he could find. He got on a ship. 6 months later, he ended up in South Africa, didn't speak a word of English, didn't speak a word of Afrikaans, but he had that drive inside of him to where he wanted to go and make something happen. So this is a total God thing. But what happened is he was driving home from church one day, and he ended up seeing one of his best friends that was already in the industry, in the screening industry, at a red light. And, they kind of waved to each other like, let's go pull off over here and let's go catch up. So they eventually founded the company that was called ScreenX, right? So ScreenX became Polydeck, and Polydeck became Polydeck over the years. We rebranded. But, yeah, so that's kind of the history of what Polydeck has gone through. And then from there, just with the political and, the uprising that happened in South Africa, they moved the company into the United States. So of all places, my grandpa decided to go to Spartanburg, South Carolina. We're kicking ourselves now, but that kind of is what it is. And my dad he's the sole shareholder of the company, so that allows us to do some pretty interesting things in terms of where we like to go and devote capital and things like that. So we're very specific in what we do, and we only do screening.
Was your father born in South Africa then?
Yeah, he was born in South Africa. So my dad has 4 sisters, and all of them were born in South Africa. And all of me and my 3 sisters were born in the United States as U.S. citizens. And then my dad and my mom got their citizenship probably 15 years later. I mean, that process took forever. So they were on a work visa for a long time and then eventually got their citizenship in the U.S. So it was interesting growing up, like we would do the Pledge of Allegiance in class, and my mom was having to learn the Pledge of Allegiance to pass the interview test, So that's kind of an interesting, upbringing.
Is it... So what year did they come? What year did they put the business in the U.S.?
What year did they come to the U.S.? Well, so it's kind of fuzzy when they started the business, because we had like an office but no manufacturing, and then we had manufacturing and offices, and then we started adding on to our logistics chain that way. But it was around the 2000s. So company was started in 1978, and then we're 45 years old right now.
Wow. So were you working for when the company, right, sort of from the get-go as a kid?
Yeah, I started working when I was 6 years old in the plant. So I was running around, not doing a whole lot, more detracting than I was adding. But, I mean, I was running around back when there was not a whole lot of safety things going on. I was, causing havoc. And my dad would go into the office and he'd say, hey, Matt, go and hang out with this guy. And they were basically my babysitters, and I grew up in a manufacturing environment my whole life. So started when I was 6, and then I eventually started getting paid when I was 15. So I worked for free for a while there.
You'll catch up over years. You'll make it back.
Yeah, I am.
Let's talk about our Heavy Industry World Tour, brought to you by Savannah Equipment, supplying mining equipment worldwide. We are heading to events across North America and Australia and filming episodes on location. Email us at info@crownsman.com to be part of Crownsman's Heavy Industry World Tour. With Fender Dunlop, you know you are getting the best conveyor belting in the market. That's because they ensure the integrity of their conveyor belting by monitoring each step of the manufacturing process in their North American facilities. Focused attention is given to each belting order to guarantee that they produce a belt that will assist the customer in reducing operation costs, maximizing uptime, and improving revenue. Visit FenderDunlopAmericas.com to learn more. Dayquip specializes in the design and manufacturing of attachments for all makes and models of compact excavators, wheel loaders, crawl dozers, and articulated dump trucks. You can choose from any of their engineered attachments, or they can design and build to your specifications. All of their products can be shipped anywhere in North America, hassle-free. If you don't see it, just ask and they will build it. Check out their website, www.dayquip.com, or email them info@dayquip.com for sales, quotes, and support. Studs and helmets use cutting-edge head protection components used previously only in extreme sports helmets, now utilized in both of Studson's Type 2 models. The SHK1 and SHK1 full brim models are the most innovative helmets on any job site. Offering a revolutionary combination of choroid and twice-me technologies, this Studson full brim helmet is the first of its kind in the Type 2 category, providing you with the protection and comfort you need to get the job done. Saving lives one helmet at a time. Studson, where safety meets innovation. You can visit them at studson.com to learn more.
Wait, Rich, I'm just curious, how did you get into the industry? And we talk a lot on the show about just sort of people's, different ways people get into the industry, and there's obviously a lot of talk about wanting more young people to get into the heavy industry sector. How did you get your start?
Well, my family owned a concrete construction business, and they did tilt-up buildings and cold storage tilt-ups. And from there, my dad told me that pouring concrete your whole life, it'll make an old man out of you quick. So I took that to heart and just moved into something that was interesting. I sold concrete supplies and accessories, and that eventually turned to a salesman position at an equipment dealership, and then it grew from there.
Yeah, most of the stories we hear is people coming from. It's a tricky thing to get people from outside the industry to just come and join. It's such a, when you grew up in it, what I did. It's it's hard to get away from.
For sure.
Yeah, but Jared, you bring up a great point about not a lot of young people being in the industry, and it's something that if you come into the industry as a young person, you can capitalize on the fact that there's a big gap between the youngest generation and then the oldest generation. So there's a lot of headroom for you to grow inside different companies.
And good paying. They're good jobs. Yeah.
Very much so.
What do you think for Polydeck? Can you just give us, what are you very specific in their product line, but can you just give us a quick run through of the products that they provide the industry?
Yeah, sure. So the products that we provide are primarily polyurethane and rubber panels. Now, polyurethane and rubber may seem like the same thing, but they work in different environments very well. Like a dry screen application is going to use a rubber panel, and a wet screen application is going to use a polyurethane panel. There's applications where they swap like that, but mainly that's the reality of the situation. And so we make our own patented fastening option for our panels. We have a couple different options, but basically what we do is think about it like the printer and the cartridge, right? So the printer, whenever you go to like a Staples, the printer's the most cost effective thing. And then the way that these companies get their money is through the cartridge, which is in our case, the panels. Yeah, the ink, exactly. So that's kind of how we do our business model. And we have some different accessories to help people solve problems in specific applications. Like in terms of the rubber line, we have a product line called Armadex. And for primary scalping applications, we make like 4-inch thick rubber with aperture holes or solid to help customers out in specific applications like that. And then these products are sold all around the world. And then we go all the way down to Australia, and then we have customers in Chile and Peru and Brazil and things like that. And then obviously we're headquartered in Spartanburg, South Carolina, so we focus heavily on the United States, North America, Canada, Mexico.
Rich, where do you now? This is fun getting to ask this question because I get to ask it from someone who competed against Polydeck to now someone who's with them. So what's their advantage in the industry when you're talking to clients?
I thought I knew a lot about screening before I went to work for Polydeck. And then when I went to work for Polydeck, I found out how little I really did know. The Polydeck, they are one of the original innovators of the synthetic media line, and they just do it right. We have, over the years, we've graduated from different systems to where in the beginning the panels were heavy and beefy and had low open area, and over the years we've progressed to where right now we're making panels that rival the open area of wire cloth, which is our main competition out there.
Yeah, and Rich, you kind of brought up a great point. Is we focus on screening. We don't make crushers. We don't make conveyors. We don't do anything like that. We 100% focus on just doing screens, and we do it really well. And over the years, we've developed solutions to very peculiar problems, and that allows us to have that opportunity where when a customer comes to us and says, hey, we have this application, we've already seen it, we've done it, there's not a whole lot of new stuff out there for us to go and do. So we always have a solution, and if we don't have a solution, we have internal tool and die manufacturing to where we can make something specific for one customer if they need it.
How often does that happen? From product to project? Would it be like 5% of your products would be unique, customized, or?
Yeah, so I mean, it's probably in that 5 to 10% range, and over the years, it's going down and down, right? Like, so when we first started 20 years ago or 40 years ago, we were developing new products all the time, but now, or new aperture and types of apertured panels all the time. But now, since we've developed this vast portfolio of different options, we can go and dig through our portfolio and say, hey, we've done this in this similar application. Look at all the technical data and say, this is going to work in that application because it's very similar, or we've done exactly this before.
Your product, Rich, I'm sure you get, this is sort of one of the topics that people are just like, if you're talking to a new client, you're one of those products that sort of has to work. One of the things that fascinates me about heavy industry is all these different plants. It's like a giant car manufacturing done each individual car. It's all a little bit differently, but there's all these little inputs. And so everything has to work exactly right. What is sort of your message to people when they're, you're one of maybe thousands of investments they're making in their plants? Yours just has to work. How do you sort of guarantee that when you're talking to clients, like a new client that hasn't worked with Polydeck before?
Well, obviously you have to go in and know the application and what you're dealing with and what kind of material they're in. And, that the material it varies from, the northern part of California all the way down to the southern part of California. You have alluvial rock plants that, they just crush natural rock, and then you go into shot rock quarries where they sit there and they drill and blast. But we take all those things into consideration, and we get with our application and engineering teams, and we put together a plan, and we ask for certain information. And when we go and recommend a product, we stand behind it. We guarantee that it's going to work, or it'll be on our dime, not on their dime.
Yeah, and a good metric of that is like cost per ton. So whenever we're trying to go in somewhere, we're guaranteeing that cost per ton is going to go down because the panels are going to last longer, or they're going to pass more material, or different things like that to offset the fixed cost with the variable costs. And another thing that I think is important to mention is, a lot of the plant managers that we deal with, a plant manager is if they have the opportunity to go to 5 or 10 plants, that's a successful career. Like what me and Rich are doing, we're going to 4 or 5 plants a day. So what that gives us is the opportunity to see a lot of different applications, a lot of different scenarios, so that when we see something, we've seen it probably done 5 or 6 other times the exact same way, so we can have a solution catered to them that we've seen work in other places.
You said the steel is the main competitor, right?
Yeah, wire cloth.
Wire cloth is the main one. What's an example of an application where the wire cloth is the way to go, or where you could go use either one?
I think that depends on the application. Like if if they're, like Rich said, if they're in a shot rock quarry and they're using wire, sometimes that can be a big downfall because they're probably changing out those wire cloths, those 4-foot sections every couple days, right? And that's a lot of downtime if they're shutting down for it. That's a lot of labor costs, and that's taking your guys away from something that they could be doing to maintain a different part of the plant, like bearings or conveyor belts or things like that. So if they're worried about the media side, which is obviously very important, instead of worrying about the rest of the plant, that could cause premature failures in another part of the plant.
Rich, do you have anything to add to it? I know you're both on the ground, so.
No, just basically what Matthew said. Our I would say our advantage over wire cloth is we do last longer. So that is and there's certain applications where wired, the product will sit there and it'll peg or it'll blind the screen over, and we offer solutions to that by having relief angles on our apertures on our panels, and then we also have different materials that we can use on a blinding issue, like low durometer urethane or low durometer rubber that helps the panel flex and move to keep the fines from sticking on the panel or blinding over the panel.
Yeah, so I'll give kind of a specific example. Is we got a mine down in Peru. Now our competitor there isn't wire, but it's another synthetic media. So they wanted more tons per hour through this deck, and they wanted more open area. They wanted more tons per hour, and they wanted a finer material passing that deck, which, talking about screening, that's normally a tough ask, because to make the aperture smaller, normally the open area goes down, and if you want to increase tons, that's normally pretty difficult. But at this copper mine, we were able to look in our portfolio of designs and say, hey, this panel is going to work really well. We were able to reduce pegging and blinding, and we were able to increase the tons per hour while closing down the aperture size. So we're giving a finer feed to the mill.
And the material, again, I know it's going to go back to understand the application, but maybe just discuss, how does your team approach it when you're dealing with a mine in Peru? Or, well, actually, are you selling? Excuse me. Are you selling direct? Or do you do?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're selling direct to these mines.
Mm-hmm.
How, when you get the information, well, let's walk through the process. You get the call, they want you to come down, you come and look at their process. Then what happens? Is it going back to an engineering team to then make recommendations?
So it's kind of like this, and I'll let Rich add to this. But so basically what we always try to start with is we try to understand the application and, how high the drop is, what type of rock it is, how many tons it is. And then we try to get gradations, right? So we want a feed gradation and then a product gradation. So we want to know, what is that screen seeing and what are you trying to make? And then it's our job as salesmen to go and figure out what type of panel in our portfolio is going to help them get there. And then basically what the engineering side does is they look at all of our orders and they double check our work, so that way when the customer asks for something, we're making sure it's right, and then our engineering department is double checking it. And that's more specific in like new applications. Like if we've never dealt with the customer before, all the technical data that we get in our proposal is going to go through the engineering department to get double checks, so that we can guarantee that the product that we're sending out is going to be fit for duty for the customer.
There's lots of times where customers are asking us, hey, I need to get more product through my screen deck. Well, that's where we go and we take the gradations, and let's say they're getting 800 tons. They want to get 800 tons an hour through the screen. So you have to have a certain amount of open area on each deck on a screen, so that product can get through based on what you're feeding it. So you have to know what's in that feed to know if our product's going to work and if it's going to get through the screen, and we can help them increase their production. Or, hey, we have some customers that have 60% of their feed is sand, and
Right.
they're trying to get it through a bottom deck of a
6x20 screen. And
yeah,
they can't
6x20 screen with a really super small aperture. So it doesn't happen. There's not enough open area on that particular deck to get all that material through.
Yeah, and sometimes it just works out like that.
Yeah, could you just expand on that a little more? Just, I mean, obviously people listening that are in the business will understand it, but just for me, what's the setup? It's a 6x20. It's a like a multi-layered screen, and they're trying to. That last
Yeah.
one is too. Basically, the holes are. It's too. It's not. The material's not fine enough.
Well, I think in this application, the plant was like whenever you set up a plant, you always set it up for a certain tons per hour that plant's going to be able to process. And no plant that's ever set up, they leave it at that number. They're always wanting more for less, right? So a lot of times what ends up happening is that the screens are undersized and they're looking to us to say, hey, Polydeck, can you help us with the solution to get more tons per hour through this screen deck and maintain the wear life that we're used to seeing? So in this application, it's down in Southern California where they have a lot of sand in the deposit. So they're trying to get a lot of sand through that bottom deck. And when I did the screening calculation, I found out that they needed almost a 30% increase in screen footage, like square footage on the deck. And sometimes you can't make up for that lack of square foot with media, right? Sometimes you're just trying to put 10 pounds of stuff into a 5-pound bag.
But are you able to? So then you're able to though provide something that would maybe not 30%, but you might be able to get them 10 just by the design, or no.
Yeah, well, in this application, our goal was to get the sand through and to reduce blinding. So what we were able to do was to help them with their blinding problem, which in turn allowed them to get more basically free square footage, because like if you have a 6x20 deck and the first 8 feet are all blinded over, you're not seeing any rock going through that deck. So basically we solved that problem, and in turn we were able to give them more effective screening area.
Right. So when people say they're trying to increase by 30%, it doesn't necessarily mean that the unit. It could be like you're saying. It's called blinding, right? When that's what
Right.
you're talking about. Basically, build up around the edges, right?
Correct.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then what I was going to ask you if I look at it, could I see the difference in material? So like if you've got, are you using different materials based on basically abrasion, impact? What is the main criteria in the actual material you're using?
Well, that's what makes Polydeck different. Is we experiment with a lot of different materials, a lot of different rubber compounds and urethane compounds. We have the Florida material, which that is for they call it Florida material because we were using it down at some plants in Florida because the microbes in the water were eating the urethane panel. So, we have that type of product. We also have a heat resistant rubber that can, 320 degrees?
Yeah, 320, 350.
Go up to 320 degrees. And then we also have an extreme duty rubber that, we like to use in the harshest of applications.
Yeah, so a great example is say we have 10,000 different panels that we can make. We can make all those different panels out of these different durometers of rubber. All of these rubbers are proprietary. So we go to our team and we say, hey, we want you to design this type of rubber to work in this specific application. And over the years, we've gotten very good at saying this type of rubber is going to work very good on a gouging, scalping application, but that same rubber might not work in an application where it's a lot of sliding abrasion.
That must be another advantage
Yeah.
to steel too, right? Is that you kind of, I mean, there is different steels, of course, but still you're able to separate out the materials very specifically, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Our rule of thumb is normally 8 to 10 times the wear life against steel. Like if you had a steel like a punch plate, and then you would have put our rubber product on there, that's one of our guarantees is you're going to see that cost. The cost per ton go down because you're gonna spend a little bit more money, but it's gonna pay back because it might be 6 times more expensive, but it's gonna last 10 times as long. So that's basically the math. You're getting all those other changes for free, basically.
I also wanted to ask about the it's not in one big sheet though, is it? It's in sections? You might have touched on this earlier, but like if one part is damaged, what is the repair approach?
We make like our urethane panels. They come in a 1 foot by 1 foot square. So yeah, if that one panel is worn, you could just take out the fasteners and put in a new 1 by 1 square. Same with rubber. Our rubber's 1 by 2, 1 foot by 2 foot. You wear that panel out, you can take it out and put another one in. So, like Matthew said, with the wire, you have to change the whole, however wide the screen is. So you have to change the whole 8-foot by 4-foot sheet instead of just changing a 1-by-1 panel.
And I think that's important to note because that's a strategic difference, right? Because there's some people that make 1x6 or 1x3 or the different lengths and widths of, rubber or polyurethane panels. But what we wanted to go and do is we said, my grandpa patented this and he was a genius for it. And he patented the very first modular synthetic media panel made out of polyurethane. And the reason that's important is because we don't have to change out the whole deck when they have a failure on one of their pieces. Like, just imagine you got the secondary application and you're seeing 800 tons an hour right onto the middle of this wire section. You're going to blow a hole through that wire and you're going to have to change out that whole thing. And the rest of that screen might be fine, right? Like on the edges or before, after that hole, it might be totally fine. But you can't replace that thing unless you patch it. So if that happens with the urethane or rubber panel, you can just pop that one out. It takes 20 minutes to pop out a couple panels, throw a couple new ones in there, and then you're back up and running in half an hour.
Huge labor savings.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The labor alone that's crazy.
You're talking
your downtime.
You're talking at least 2 guys an hour to undo the side clamp rails, pull the wire out, and put a new panel in. I mean, it's a pretty in-depth process.
That's 2 guys that know what they're doing too. That's I've messed
Very
around
true.
with those screens before. It's not just a simple.
And it's dangerous too, right? You get a lot of pinch points. Those things are heavy. You gotta get a crane out there because once you have it on there, you gotta figure out how to get it down to the floor because these screens are normally on towers, right? So you're dealing with the screen media, and then you have to deal with the after effect of what are we gonna do with it.
Yeah, no, it really is an amazing product, and I remember from mine now. I went, oh yeah. I mean, it's one of those products. You're like, okay, well, I guess there's not really much to say other than this is better. I mean.
Yeah, it works. It's pretty clear.
Yeah. What do you have any plans for, like, new products coming out, or sort of new business ventures? What's your sort of focus, Matt?
Yeah, so over the years we've grown a lot. I mean, we're growing so fast right now. We're having to be selective and strategic of what we're going after because, like you're saying, a lot of people are starting to notice that this is an excellent product and it works really well, and it's something that you can rely on. And our service and support is fantastic. But, some new products that we're going after, I'll kind of hit on this one, is that we're working towards sustainability and a lot of goals. A lot of companies have very high and lofty strategic goals for sustainability. So we're doing some interesting things with our different products to where we're creating a circular economy to where that material is being reused in different products, and we're working on patents for this process because it's something that people really need, and it's something that the younger generation that I'm a part of is starting to pay more and more attention to. So we want to be an innovator, industry leader in that facet, so that we can go and be a sustainable partner for our customers.
Is that quite a process? Figuring like that whole patent process, figuring out how to get that circular economy, do you sort of have the pieces in place to do it, or is it quite an undertaking for your company?
Yeah, so patents is nothing new to us. I mean, we have 40 international patents that we use every day, and it really helps us differentiate ourselves from competitors. But the process was pretty interesting. I can happily say it now that we figured out the process and we know exactly how to go and do it. It's now bringing it to the market. That's the focus as of right now. But I mean, it's definitely a process, and it's something that's been done for a while in terms of like plastic bottles and things like that. Like the recycling world it's very switched on to that, but the mining world isn't really switched on to recycling. So we're on the cutting edge of trying to bring this to the market and trying to show people that there's once the panel is worn out and the aperture is done, it's out of spec. That panel can be reused for something else. It doesn't have to sit in the yard somewhere and just rot. We can take that back from customers and say, hey, let me do something with these panels for you.
Yeah. Rich, I wanted to just ask how, like, boots on the ground, are you putting boots on the ground all over the world, or or do you have partners? How are you getting people to some of these locations? Or is it like, do you do it or is your primary business sort of still like localized in the US?
Well, we do have boots on the ground, and we also have dealers that represent us. So, like in California, we just went to to direct sales, direct to the customer. It's been a successful business model for us in other parts of the country, and we're seeing the results right now.
Of just dealing directly with. It does seem it's almost getting. There's so much data now. I see how a dealer it's still a good model. I mean, we have media partners and stuff, and it's obviously still works very well, but I'm just realizing there's an extra layer now, because like you're talking about the circular economy, all the data points, there's more information. So now you're having to sort of pass it through a more information through a chain, as opposed to,
Right.
40 years ago, here's a product, you sell it, you mark it up, you're good to go. It's more involved now. Do you think that's accurate, what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I agree with that.
A lot of the times, there's just these dealers have a lot of product lines to sell, and they might not grasp the Polydeck information like they would something else.
Well, all the
It's,
nuance that you have, because it's so specific to each application, and
Yeah,
how do
it
you go?
requires a lot of knowledge for sure.
Yeah, and how do you sort of go about supporting those dealers, getting them that information? Is it about how accurate their information is coming back to you? Is that the approach?
we try and get them training. Get them training, ride along with them, go and make calls with them, and just pack them full with as much information as they need to go and do the job. But at the end of the day, nobody knows our business like we know our business.
Right. Yeah, and it really does come down to knowledge transfer. I mean, we work very closely with all of our dealers around the world, and it's on us to make sure that they're going to bring the right product to these customers, because like you said, it's very knowledge intensive, and you have to really know what you're doing, because our performance guarantee says if we get it wrong, we eat that cost, right? So it's there's quite a bit of money at stake all the time when we're going out and proposing solutions for customers, and we have to get it right, and that extends to our dealers.
Matthew, Rich, it's great to have you on. It was a great conversation last time Polydeck was on, and this is no different. It's a pleasure to interview a company that has, of course, great products and great service and all the things that need to be an innovation in that, but also does have a soul. So I really do appreciate your time, and I hope you're back.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
And thank you, everyone, for watching. Of course, we'll have a link. It's just polydeck.com, but we'll have a link. If you're watching this, just go into the description. You'll find it. But they also have a LinkedIn page. They have a YouTube page. We'll put Matthew and Richard's, their actual LinkedIn, so you can connect with them directly. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Please keep suggesting guests. Please subscribe. Please share it out. It's great to be a part of this industry. It's quite an honor for us. And we will see you on the next episode of The Construction Show.